The NBA world was shocked as Indiana Pacers center Myles Turner was reported to have signed a 2-year, $60 million contract extension. Fans thought that this meant that Myles Turner was going to be making $30 million a year over the next 2 years, but Indiana did something extremely smart and interesting, and we're going to talk about this Myles Turner extension. This is also the trade deadline preview for the Indiana Pacers, our third in a series of previews for NBA teams as we head up into the trade deadline. At some point, I'm going to try to start doing 2 of these a day, so definitely subscribe so you don't miss any of those, and we'll get you geared up for February 9th. Now, I will be hosting a trade deadline stream over on my original Blazers Uprise channel. In the future, I want to host it here as we do talk about every NBA team, but we got to get this channel big enough in order to get to that point. With that being said, you should sit back, relax, and we're going to dive into the world of the Indiana Pacers. As of now, the Pacers hold a 24-27 record in the East, good for 9th place. However, this has been a very successful season to the Pacers, who didn't have high expectations going into this year. Bennedict Mathurin has looked great, Tyrese Halliburton has turned himself into an all-star, and they still have Myles Turner for years to come unless they trade him. The Pacers have had some impressive moments in close games. Analytically, they don't look too strong, 25th in net rating, 17th in adjusted offensive rating, 23rd in adjusted defensive rating. They're a perimeter-based team right now. Myles Turner is a perimeter big other than his rim protection, and that's why the Pacers' strong suit is their playmaking and three-point shooting. Their weaknesses, however, surprisingly are guarding the three-point line, as well as rebounding the ball. They're one of the worst teams in the league. That's a big struggle of Myles Turner's, and they don't score well in the paint. It'll be interesting to see if the Pacers try and address these weaknesses as we head into the trade deadline in order to try and make a playoff push. The other interesting thing about the Pacers is they're below the salary cap. They were much further below the cap before signing Myles Turner to his extension. We'll talk about that in a second. But they can take back an extra $7 million in salary without having to match it. Now, if the Pacers somehow take back even more salary than that, they will have to match that salary based on the CBA's trade matching rules. If at the end of a trade you're still below the salary cap, matching doesn't matter. If you're past the salary cap, it does. They also have multiple firsts they can put in play, which might make them a legitimate buyer. We'll look at those picks in a sec. First, let's talk about Myles Turner's contract extension. This year, Turner was making around $18 million. I don't remember off the top of my head, but that got bumped up to $35 million. He was going to be a free agent this upcoming offseason, but in order to retain him the next 2 seasons at a lower price point, the Pacers overpaid him this season with cap space that they already had. They were far below the salary cap floor, which is an amount that you must pay players, and if you're below that salary cap floor, the amount you're below gets split up in extra payments to every other member of the roster. Instead of that happening, the Pacers took the money that they were going to lose anyway and gave it to Myles Turner in order to save on his contract the next 2 seasons. It was a very smart move by the Pacers, and having the next 2 years of Turner's contract being cheaper could make him easier to trade once the season is done. Turner can still be traded this year, however, $36 million is hard to match, and while there's been trade rumors surrounding him for years, it seems like the Pacers are still going to hold on to him. Meanwhile, you got Buddy Hield making $20 million this year. There is a solid chance that he gets moved. The Pacers have a lot of quality younger perimeter players. Bennedict Mathurin is a rookie who's been phenomenal. Tyrese Halliburton is an all-star point guard right now. They have Chris Duarte on the wing. Aaron Nesmith has gotten some time. Andrew Nembhard has been very solid as a second-round rookie point guard off the bench. So it'll be interesting to see if the Pacers try and clear up a little bit of a logjam by moving Buddy Hield. I don't think any of the other guys that I listed will be moved at this year's trade deadline, and Buddy Hield should be able to fetch at least a first-round pick. Daniel Tice is a center that hasn't done a whole lot this year. He's making almost $9 million a year, which might be a bit of an overpay. It'll be interesting to see if the Pacers buy him out. And otherwise, I don't think anyone else on this Pacers roster is someone who they're looking to get rid of. the Pacers could be buyers this year, and obviously would have to match salary for some of the higher contract players. I just don't think they're dying to get rid of anyone. Now let's take a look at their draft picks. They own 3 first-round picks this year. One of their own, one from Boston, which is protected 1 through 12 this year, so obviously it's going to be in the Pacers' hands, and then one for the Cleveland Cavaliers, which is lottery protected, and Cleveland's good enough that you can easily assume that that pick will be the Pacers as well. Both the Celtics and the Cavs will make the playoffs, so the Pacers have 3 legitimate firsts just from this year to put in play. We'll have a trade idea at the end of this thing taking a look at that. They also have all their future firsts. They could trade up to 4 of them outright while abiding by the Stepien rule, so that is 6 firsts that the Pacers can put in play, not counting potential first-round pick swaps. They also have some second-rounders that they can lump in order to swing the balance of a trade. The Pacers are in great position to add right now. As this is the first trade deadline preview without a guest, I will continue to give some of my thoughts on potential moves they should do, and I will have an extra trade idea. The first trade I have for Indiana is very simple. They're trading Andrew Nembhard and Daniel Tice to the Raptors for OG Anunoby, with those 3 first-round picks from 2023 lumped in. Now, there is a debate on how many first-round picks the Raptors could get for OG Anunoby. I think there's a chance he might be able to fetch 4 if enough teams are in a bidding war for him, but 3 is a more reasonable amount, and with 2 of these picks being later in the first, this is a really good value for Indiana. Andrew Nembhard is a really good fit with the Raptors, in my opinion, as a young future point guard to take over for Fred VanVleet, who can play on or off the ball, which makes sense when you got Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam, who are playmaking forwards. And Nembhard is also Canadian, so that's a cool wrinkle to this. Being able to get a young point guard at a position of need on top of 3 first-round picks, I think is a solid haul for the Raptors if they choose to trade OG. And as for the Pacers, they get a player who could help with their defensive problems. A long-term starting lineup of Halliburton, Mathurin, and OG Anunoby is extremely interesting. If I was Indiana, I'd follow this up with a Buddy Hield trade, which I'll have up next. And Anunoby is young enough to fit a rebuilding timeline while also giving the Pacers a chance to truly make the playoffs this year. If OG Anunoby is truly unhappy in Toronto and wants more of an offensive role, Indiana could give that to him. Tyrese Halliburton is a good scorer, but he's also a great distributor who passes the ball quite a bit and can play off of guys as well. OG Anunoby, I think, would have more of an offensive role, but it wouldn't be to the point where it was a bad thing. This second trade is as simple as it gets. It's a straight up player swap between the Hawks and the Pacers. John Collins goes to Indiana, meanwhile Buddy Hield goes to Atlanta. Atlanta is ranked 23rd in 3-point shooting right now and could use a knockdown 3-point sniper. Buddy Hield is one of the better volume 3-point shooters in the league. It would make a lot of sense. Meanwhile, John Collins' production has fallen off the past couple of years, and some even view him as a negative contract right now. I think John Collins would be a solid fit next to Myles Turner in the Indiana offense, and Collins is young enough to also fit Indiana's timeline. Even if the Pacers traded for OG Anunoby, you could see them maybe trying to get John Collins as well. Anunoby, John Collins, Myles Turner, that's an intriguing front court in the starting lineup, and a 3-big rotation of Turner, Collins, and Jalen Smith off the bench would be a solid group. This trade would be extremely interesting. I don't know if Atlanta does it. They might need a little bit of sweetener, but if John Collins truly is a negative contract according to some GMs, and Atlanta just wants to get off of him, this would be a really good trade return for them. And since this recording, as I am currently editing this video, the Indiana Pacers have been linked to John Collins. Apparently they're interested in him, along with another power forward center hybrid, an athletic big man, a big man that I have going to the Pacers in my final trade. In this final trade, I have the Pacers trading Goga Bitadze, as well as a first-round pick for Jared Vanderbilt. Now, you could see different iterations of this trade. If this is a follow-up to the initial OG Anunoby trade, then maybe that's a 2025 first or so forth. Also, if the Pacers don't do much, of course, they wouldn't have to trade out Bitadze in this trade to the Utah Jazz. They could just absorb Jared Vanderbilt with the $7 million of cap space they have left over after the Myles Turner extension. But Jared Vanderbilt, much like John Collins, would fill that starting power forward role, and I think Myles Turner would be a good fit next to Vanderbilt, as he's a power forward with center skills offensively. He's an interior guy, not much of a shooter. Myles Turner, of course, is a stretch 5, so Vanderbilt plus Turner in the front court would be very intriguing long term for the Indiana Pacers. Lots of shot blocking there. Anyway, that wraps up my trade deadline preview on the Indiana Pacers. These are going to come a lot more steadily as I have a couple people helping me out edit now. So let me know what team you want to see next down in the comment section below. I have a couple really good interviews lined up that I'm looking forward to, so make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss those. Let me know what you think of the Indiana Pacers as well. What do you think they should do at the NBA trade deadline? If you're a Pacers fan, what moves do you want to see your team make? Let me know in that comment section. And with that being said, I'm out of here. I'll catch you in the next one. Until then, peace.